People should take shelter away from our Krishna Gicchadi Shikshan. One should take initiation from him. One should serve him. There are certain rules we should do. Things that should be. Then there are do nots. There are many. One should not associate with worldly minded people. One should not be neglectful in worldly dealings. One should only deal with the world as much as is necessary. One should not tell lies before the deity. One should not shout, scream before the deity. One should not turn his back to the deity. There are certain things that should be done, and things that should not be done. So the positive injunctions, they are for developing, they positively develop our love for Krishna. And the things do not, they block us out from doing things which obstruct our Krishna consciousness. They stop us from making offenses, or they stop us from engaging in worldly activities which pollute our consciousness. So the whole point is to revive our Krishna consciousness, or to purify our consciousness. Purify consciousness means Krishna consciousness. The opposite of that is putrefied consciousness, rotten, sick consciousness. There are two kinds of consciousness. Consciousness of one kind, but when it's covered over, it's called contaminated consciousness. Contaminated consciousness means when we think in terms of I, me, and mine, aham, mameti, in relationship to this material body. I am America. This is my wife. These are my children. This is my car. This is my home. So this is to identify with this as reality, as the ultimate reality. That is contaminated consciousness. And constitutional consciousness is to think that I am the servant of Krishna. This is Krishna consciousness. The whole science of Bhakti Yoga is to revive the dormant Krishna consciousness. So that is meant for everybody, and as Prabhupada many times promised us, if we follow this process of Krishna consciousness, scientific process of Krishna consciousness, then our loving feelings of devotion to Krishna will gradually arise in inverse proportion to the subsiding of material desires. And it's possible for everybody to be fully Krishna conscious in this life. That is, it may take many lifetimes, but it's possible even within this life. It's possible even now, if we want it. Sometimes Prabhupada asks, how long does it take to be Krishna conscious? Prabhupada said, you can be Krishna conscious immediately if you want to. But that's our whole problem, that we don't really want to. So the process of Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting about Krishna, serving Krishna, associating with devotees, that revives our natural constitutional desires to be Krishna conscious. Actually we do, in the core of our hearts, we want to be Krishna conscious. But we are in the bad habit of thinking otherwise. From many, many lifetimes, we are in the habit of thinking that not serving Krishna will make us happy. We're in the habit of thinking that by indulging in sense gratification, that will make us happy. Even though we see, Janiya Shuniya Visha Kainu, even knowing and hearing about it and in all respect understanding, we're still addicted to drinking the poison of material sense gratification. We can see all around us that it doesn't bring any happiness. America is the prime example how everything in this country is done very much on the principle that we will be happy by earning money and enjoying sense gratification. So this is the motto of America. This is the raison d'etre, very mean, why this country is going on. That everyone is very busy working for sense gratification. But we see factually people are not happy. We can see that sense gratification doesn't lead to happiness. But still we're so much addicted to thinking like that if I could have more money, if I could have prestige, if I could have power, if I could enjoy sex life in so many different ways, then I would be happy. So this is our diseased or contaminated consciousness. Krishna consciousness means to give up this false concept of life and just accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I am His servant. Maharaj was mentioning this morning, quoting Bhakti Thakur, that the hallmark of Vaishnavism is simplicity. Now, simplicity can be understood as simple living very simply without a big, gorgeous arrangement. Simplicity is sometimes understood as foolishness also. That's not that kind of simplicity, not naivety or foolishness. But the essence of simplicity is simply to accept that Krishna is my master, I am his servant. Not very complex. Sometimes people come to devotional service, they have so many complex questions. What about this? Unless they, what about this? What about that? And because there are so many factors, if we read Srimad Bhagavatam especially, there's so many different things discussed, so many different subjects. So it's with some devotees, or people come to devotional service, it's almost as if they want every single question answered in great detail. And only then, when they can understand every single thing, then they'll think about surrendering to Krishna. But someone who's really got the Bhakti Bhavana, or the mood of devotion, their basic mood is to accept that yes, I'm the servant of Krishna, and there may be so many details of philosophy I don't understand. But anyway, they're just because I'm a fool, not that because I don't understand it, therefore there must be something wrong with it. You see the difference? I can't understand this point of philosophy with my intellect, therefore there's something wrong with the philosophy. That's not a devotional attitude. The devotional attitude is that I'm such a fool, I don't understand. And you must be right. Krishna is saying, Vyasadeva is saying, Prabhupada is saying. But here I am, back to so-and-so. I don't understand. So therefore Vyasadeva is wrong. Especially sometimes we hear this question about how did the soul fall from the spiritual world, or did he fall, or didn't he fall, or maybe Krishna put us here. There must be something wrong with Krishna. So it's not my fault. I'm a good guy. Why am I here? Must be Krishna. He put me here out of his nastiness. He just wanted to be nasty. There's some kind of implication. You can't understand. Well, you can't understand because you're a fool. That's why we're here because we're fools. That's the basic understanding. We're foolish because we don't accept Krishna's mercy. So simplicity means simply to accept. Krishna must be right. Just like Arjuna told Krishna when he heard Bhagavad Gita, Sarvameta Manyeyam Man Vadasi Keshava. That Krishna, whatever you say, I accept it. It's true. So with this attitude, we can accept. Very easily we can take to Krishna consciousness. This is simplicity. Not a very complex mind. We're trying to understand the whole universe with our brain power. It's not possible. You can't understand. You can't even understand one atom. You don't even understand how you're passing stool. Do you understand when you eat? Do you understand are you personally monitoring how all the glands are secreting enzymes and digesting everything? And you don't understand. How your brilliant, fantastic brain is working. Do you understand? Does anyone understand? At least one neurosurgeon I was speaking to, and about 3 years ago, his job is cutting people's heads off and operating on them. And he told me that we don't have more than 5% idea of how the brain works anyway. We think that there's some kind of charge is sent between the neurons, but we don't really know if that's true or not. We're working on that supposition. No, we're not really sure. So how much do we understand anyway about anything? So at least we should accept that Krishna understands. And actually that's how you begin to understand. Understanding Krishna consciousness, as I was saying, understanding begins with standing under. First of all, you accept that I'm very insignificant and tiny living being in a great universe. And how much can I understand? But whoever made this universe, he must understand what's going on. So even if I don't understand, if I accept what he says, then I can understand. And with this attitude, you can begin to understand. Jiva Goswami says this. At the beginning of understanding Krishna, even this happens. Tell them when you go back to India. Maybe it's only in ISKCON temple. Anyway, Jiva Goswami says that the beginning of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to accept that He has achintya shakti, inconceivable potencies. Achintya means that the beginning of understanding is to understand that you can't understand fully anything. How will you understand God fully? Like I say, you don't even understand one atom in your body, how it's working. And how are you going to understand Krishna? How are you going to understand accommodate everything in your brain? It's not possible. So the first thing we have to understand is that it's not possible for us to understand. And then when we understand that, then we can begin to understand. Does it make sense? Not on the material platform. We can begin to understand the inconceivable when we understand that we can't conceive it. Then you can approach it in the proper way. But if you think you can understand everything about it, it's not possible. And even in a material subject, is there any person who can say they understand everything about mathematics? Is there anyone who can say, you can take some subject, like they study, make so many different dissertations for PhDs, the nocturnal habits of Brazilian yellow-winged grasshoppers, something like this. And they make a big paper that they study for 5 years, going out in the fields and studying grasshoppers. Can you say even then you understand everything about them? It's not possible. I was reading someone spent most of his life passing earthworms through low voltage water charged with low voltage and observing their reactions. Spent his whole life. And at the end, he concluded that he didn't come to any conclusion anyway. The result of his failure. His whole thing was a failure. Many are the heroic stories in scientific research. So when we begin to understand, you can't understand. When you begin to understand, you can't understand, then you can begin to understand. Because Krishna blesses, you can begin to understand. When you understand that you can't ever understand everything about Krishna, that's the first thing to understand. That is the first thing to understand. And then you can begin to see, oh, how great is Krishna. You see, our whole universe is created, maintained and destroyed with just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of His potency. That's the beginning of understanding. And then when you hear so many things, when we come to Krishna consciousness, we hear so many things which we never heard about. That God sometimes has 4 hands, sometimes has 10 hands, sometimes has 1,000 hands. That all the universes come from His body, and yet He's within every universe, within every atom. How can you understand that defies the laws of physics? That if something comes out of something else, that means that something else is bigger and you can't put it inside. Like Russian dolls, you take one out, there's another one. You take that one out, and there's another one. So you can't put the biggest one inside the smallest one. But Krishna is the biggest, everything comes from Him, and He goes back inside everything else. That's why He's God. If He couldn't do that, then why would we be meaning to Him being God? So that's the beginning, just to understand that you can't understand everything. Then, with that attitude, simplicity. So simplicity here means simply to accept. God is inconceivable. He's so great. It's not that we say God is great. It doesn't mean that I'm this much great and He's this much great. It doesn't mean like that. He's far, far greater than we can even imagine. Even Brahma, the greatest being in the universe, thought he could measure Krishna. But then Krishna showed that, my dear Brahma, we're giving you some respect as the creator of this universe. But actually, truth be told, you're also insignificantly greater. So this is Krishna's position. It's so much greater. So simplicity simply means to accept. That I'm not the controller. I'm not the enjoyer. There's no happiness in material life. Let me simply surrender to Krishna. I can't understand fully, but it's not even required to understand fully. That's another foolish attempt to try to understand Krishna fully. It's not possible. You can't measure Krishna. You can't put him in a box and say, yes, I love him. Here's information about Krishna, A, B, C, finished. Now we understood everything about Krishna. Not possible. You can't even describe even one of his potency. Ananta Shesh, his own incarnation, means there's full potency of Krishna. But with his full potency, he's trying to fully glorify Krishna, and even he can't. Because Krishna's glories are always expanded. You can't, even Krishna himself cannot fully describe his glories. And you say, well then Krishna can. Well, he can. But the thing is, his glories are always expanding. So even when he does explain his full glories, then they're always expanding, so then he has to go on. So there's no end. So that's simplicity. And so simplicity is concomitant with humility. That simply accepting, yes, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, I am the servant. So this is the attitude by which we can very quickly take to devotional service and take to Krishna consciousness. But that the very opposite of that is pride, thinking that I by my own brain power or my own endeavor I'll become spiritual advanced. I will conquer over Maya. You can't do that. But by surrendering to Krishna, Krishna gives us the strength by which we can get free from Maya. Ultimately, it's our own choice. What is advancement in Krishna consciousness means to surrender to Krishna. And the opposite of that is to surrender to Maya. We're always servants. If we're not serving Krishna, then we're serving our senses. It means serving Maya. So the choice is there. Ultimately, it's our own choice. But because we have a bad habit for many, many lifetimes, therefore we have to take to this process of sadhana bhakti to purify our consciousness so that we choose to serve, we make the right choice to serve Krishna. And surrender, it's an ongoing process. If you surrender to Krishna, then just like someone comes to Ambu and they surrender to Krishna, you may surrender a lot of things. You surrender your hair. That's one of the first things. Nowadays, that's kind of fashion not to have any hair, but usually it's considered socially not very acceptable. When you surrender your hair, you surrender your independence to a large extent because you agree to follow so many different rules and regulations, whether you're living in other ashrams or not. You're supposed to surrender to a guru, which is a very big step. If you actually do that, it means to put the direction of your life in someone else's hands. It's a very big step. So we're asked to make a lot of very big decisions to go against the current of prevailing culture, which is total hedonism. So we're asked to surrender in so many ways. But the ultimate surrender is to fully surrender our consciousness to Krishna. We're doing this. We surrender to Guru, surrender our hair, put on tilak. These are all points of surrender. But to fully give our mind and consciousness to Krishna means to give up all thoughts of sense gratification, only think how to serve Krishna. Now, because we are minute jivas, part and parcel of Krishna, we may surrender, but due to that bad habit of we're in a neophyte position until we're fully Krishna conscious. We surrender, but then again we think about it and we go forward and back. Shall I surrender? Shall I not? Yes, I'm surrendering. And then, all right, it's my last lifetime in this material world. I better get whatever. Enjoy while you can. So we're like caught between the two things. Shall I surrender? Yeah, but not too much. There's a story told in the Mahabharata. Because previously in Indian culture, the entertainment in the king's courts, there were so many different kinds of entertainment. One of them was the different pundits would meet and they would discuss philosophical points from the scriptures. It was more refined entertainment than watching wrestling on TV, other rather low-class, uncultured things that people do in the modern age. They would have debating competitions. scriptures. So the king in his court, he asked all the different Brahmins who are ministers. There'll be learned Brahmins and there'll be the ministers of the king. So he asked the question, they all have to put forward their different theses, that why is it that we don't give up Maya? We know that Maya is bad. And why don't we give it up? So they all put forward their different theories, one after another. And everyone listened, and they all sounded pretty good. Why we don't give up Maya? So everyone was speaking, and then they looked, and they saw there was one old Brahmin, just sitting quietly. He hadn't said anything. The people had been speaking, and others had commented, and they had some argument and debate and discussion. One old Brahmin, he hadn't said anything. So then they were all looking at him to see what he was saying. So he saw they were all looking at him. What would he say? He didn't say anything. He got up and went to one pillar like this in the car and held onto it tightly and said, "Let me go! Let me go!" It's like he's gone crazy. He's holding onto the pillar tight, very tightly and saying, "Let me go! Let me go!" So he did this for a few minutes. "Please, please, let me go! Let me go!" And he sat down. Sitting there looking rather puzzled. They'd never seen him behave like that before. He was considered a wise man. And he said, "This is why we can't get rid of Maya. It's not that we can't get rid of it. It's not that Maya is holding on to us, but we are holding on to Maya. And we are saying, let me go, let me go." We want to hold on. Maya will let us go if we want to serve Krishna. We are holding on to our material attachments. So Krishna consciousness is a process by which we become purified and we hold on to the lotus feet of Krishna. We become attached to Krishna. So we don't want to hold on to Maya. Because as living beings, we want happiness. That is our nature. Krishna is the reservoir of pleasure. And as his tiny part and parcel, it's also our nature to look for pleasure. But we don't have experience, or we're not accustomed to the pleasure of Krishna consciousness, which far outweighs the pleasures of this material world, which are not actually pleasure. It's a perverted expression of pleasure, which is actually a cause of suffering. Material happiness is simply a cause of suffering. But because we don't have experience of anything better, we are attracted to material sense gratification. So Krishna consciousness is the process of purification by which, by hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, associating with the devotees of Krishna, thinking about Krishna, taking Krishna prasadam, seeing the beautiful forms of Krishna, that our senses revive their dormant, natural attraction for Krishna, so that we don't want to hold on to mind, we want to hold on to Krishna. So we make the right choice. So we make the right choice that when the temptation of Maya comes, as the temptation of Maya will come, that we'll say, "No, I'm not interested. I'm interested in serving Krishna." So in the pure devotional state, in purified consciousness, when our consciousness is completely purified, then we have no attraction to Maya. But in the meantime, we have to follow the rules and regulations of devotional service, which positive injunctions are there to help us develop our attraction from Krishna, and the negative injunctions are there to protect us from falling back into that Maya. Therefore, don't eat meat, don't drink alcohol, don't have illicit sex, don't gamble, don't do this, don't do this, don't. That is to protect us. Don't associate with worldly-minded people. So this is a protection. And on the positive side, chant Hare Krishna. Take Krishna. So positive and negative injunctions. And when we're actually purified, then this comes automatically. We automatically think of Krishna. We automatically. It's not that we're told, you must chant Hare Krishna so many rounds, but naturally the attraction comes to do that. And the pure devotee doesn't have to be told that don't think about sense gratification, don't engage in sense gratification. Yes, there's no interest. There's no interest. Because he's fully interested in thinking about Krishna. Alright, we have very short time today. Start praying. So, take a few questions. Why should we study the scripture? What for the same? Consciousness is studying the scriptures for this point, that let me surrender to Krishna, with that mood. Even a neophyte devotee may study the scripture with the idea of, I will become learned and others will appreciate it. That's not, this mood of study will not help us. So study the scripture for the sake of developing a Krishna consciousness, and then at a more mature stage also, we may want to study for the sake of facilitating our service of preaching Krishna consciousness to others. But from the beginning, if we have this attitude, sarvameta kritang manye yang man varsikesha, if we have this attitude of I'm studying but to understand what is the fact, then it's very helpful. But if we go see the modern education, that trains us not to accept anything unless the verification is by our own intellect. It's a very poor standard. This is the coming from the so-called rationalistic or humanistic ideas that everything should be understood by our intellect. The standard of understanding is human understanding. Very foolish idea, because we are prone to ram pramad vikalipsa kalana patar, which means we make mistakes, we're illusioned, we have the cheating propensity, and we have imperfect senses. So therefore, when we read that Prabhupada says the moon is further away than the sun, when we think, don't believe it. But if we take the scriptures given by God, who made this universe, he should know. So if the scientists think the other way around, then they must be wrong. But if we think, well, I went to school and they taught me that the moon is just close to the earth and the sun isn't, then we lose our faith. You had, I'm trying to do it. Order of hands going up. Well, Shraddha, that is explained. Shraddha, Shraddha Vishas Kai Sudhira Nishchay Jai Krishna Bhakti Paile Sarva Kama Pratyahat. The definition of faith in Krishna consciousness is the fixed faith, this faith, that by performing devotional service to Krishna, everything is taken care of, everything is complete. Actually, another understanding is that when we hear this, we might think that I should just accept Krishna consciousness with blind faith. That's also not encouraged. We should also try to understand with our intelligence. But understanding with our intelligence doesn't mean that we take our intelligence as the ultimate standard of understanding. Rather, we should use the intelligence that God has given us with the basic understanding that we can only understand with purified intelligence, which is surrendered to Krishna. It's like Arjuna had so many questions. Krishna cleared them up. So intelligence should be applied, but with the submissive mood. Jnane prayasamudapasya namanta jivanti sanmukaritam lavati avad. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted that. Giving up the attempt to understand everything simply by our own intelligence We should apply our intelligence to humbly hear from suffering my souls and Krishna. Then we can understand. That's true. Yeah, that's a very interesting analysis. No, faith is there. The faith, everyone has faith in some people say, I don't believe in anything. When you stuff that McDonald's hamburger in your throat, you have faith that that's not poison, it's not full of poison. Actually it is, but it's not like cyanide that makes you have faith that they're not giving you some lethal poison. You have faith when you're walking on the road that the earth will support you. So faith must be there. Otherwise you won't even breathe, you won't stop breathing. Reason also. There's also faith in Shastra is also it's reasonable faith, based on the supposition that, on the understanding that we can't understand everything anyway. Our ability to understand through the empiric method, by seeing, touching, hearing, smelling, tasting, and then hypothesizing according to what we see, or what we observe to our sense perception. But it's a very, very limited way to accept knowledge. This is pratyaksha anuman. Seeing, I only believe what I see. And then you see so many things and you hypothesize them. So that's a very limited way of understanding. It's rational to accept that seeing as we're such tiny living beings with limited intelligence, it's rational to accept that there are almost certainly many, many things which are beyond our powers of sensual observation. So therefore we have to take knowledge from those who are on a higher level of understanding than us. It's not a difficult thing to understand. For devotees, they can accept it very easily. It requires some piety. Those who are impious, they can't take to Krishna. They don't even believe in God. How we do it? And I'm just going in order of the hands that I saw going up. Yeah, what about family members? It's very frightening when they get things like this. Material means when we're doing it for our own sense enjoyment. Now at the same time, like I say, those who are in household life, when they hear these things, it may seem very frightening to them, or impossible to them. But that example is there of applying everything in Krishna's service, dovetailing everything in Krishna's service. You have your children here? Yet to come. Alright, well, naturally, all women like to have children. And you're attached to them. But that attachment, just like Bhakti Thakur. We were reading today about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was the child of Bhakti Thakur. Bhakti Thakur was a pure devotee, so is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So every parent wants to see the best for their children. So when you understand that the best thing is if my child becomes a pure devotee of Krishna, and that attachment to them is properly channeled by training them in devotional service. So it's not possible for us to give up all attachments immediately, but if we channel them in Krishna's service, then that is the proper way to Krishnaize our life. Yes, that's right. That's why we also need to be guided in spiritual life. Another thing is, though, just like we're talking about being guided by Guru will help us to overcome our attachments, but it's not necessary that the Guru will come in and just try and remove all our attachments all at once, because he knows that may not be possible, but rather he will guide us to keep on in our devotional activities. So, because the process of devotional service itself is purifying, so that if we go on with that, and gradually we will become purified. But if this subtle attachment becomes too much, you see, Guru means expert guide us. If it becomes too much or too prominent, then some surgery may be required. Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, well, that's great. If you enjoy that, that's good. That means you're making advancement. No, we should be happy in Krishna service. If we're not happy in Krishna consciousness, then that's not really Krishna consciousness, is it? The natural result of performing activities in Krishna service is that we become happy. Now, if we become attached to that happiness for our own pleasure, and we say, I'm only going to do the service that I want to do, it's also not outside the realm of devotional service, but it's conditional devotional service. It's better to do whatever. See, there are two different things. One thing is engaging devotees according to their propensity, what they like to do. Another thing is to do whatever is required to do. If everyone says, well, I like dancing in kirtan, but I don't like washing the pots, then the pots won't get washed. Someone has to wash the pots. So a more advanced devotee does whatever is required of Krishna service and finds pleasure in any service, considering that I'm so fortunate to serve Krishna in any capacity. So that's more advanced level. At the same time, generally we're encouraged to perform activities that we can take to more easily. And you see, even Krishna engaged Arjuna to fight against the Kauravas. He didn't ask Kunti Devi to come and fight. She was engaged according to her psychophysical. They're all pure devotees. She was engaged according to her psychophysical propensities and social position. And so was Arjuna. Of course, in the modern world, they might call out Kunti Devi. You see women in the army, and women weightlifters, boxing, and all kinds of things. It's just another symptom of the modern insane society. Women's boxing. Very strange. Even men's boxing is strange. Yeah. Say it more loudly.
In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains stages of motivation and passion and goodness. As a devotee, we meet different kinds of people and bad. How do we have what kind of respect do you have? They may be doing some religious activity, not be exactly what of instead of criticizing or doing something, what kind of respect do you have for the kind of faith they have?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Coming to America, I see everywhere so many churches. Wherever you see, we were driving along yesterday, and in a few moments I was awake. I saw "Trust Jesus" and signs up and quotes from the Bible. I mean, definitely in this country, there's a lot of religious faith. It's not purely Shastriya from the Vedic point of view, but definitely people have an inclination towards God. And even though that's mixed up with sinful activities like meat eating, but that whatever is there is a big plus. It's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's a very nice thing. Even such people, they might be difficult candidates to bring to Krishna consciousness as we know it. But that basic faith in God, even though they don't really know who He is or what His proper instructions are, that's definitely something very good. So we recognize that. At the same time, we recognize that if their faith in God is to be developed properly, then they should take some direction from the Vedic literatures. So it's good. Alright, I'm going to finish there. The next program is supposed to be 11 o'clock. Isn't it? 11:15. Oh, okay, we can go on. Alright, let me take another question.
This is one of the principles is being one of the investment spiritual life. One of the questions that I'm often asked is, considering that spiritual mastery and this is longing for water, physical form, and form of expression, why should one seek out the spiritual mastery in physical form?
Why don't you just read Bhagavad Gita then? Why don't you just read Bhagavad Gita? Krishna is the original guru. You just have him as a guru. Krishna himself made this system that you need personal guidance. I'll tell you something that on Radhashtami, that was just a few days ago, last Sunday. I was lecturing in England, and someone who was present in that lecture in the questions said, because I was telling some stories of Radharani and like this. So he was saying that, well, I don't think you have to discuss all these stories. You can just chant Hare Krishna, and those things will become manifest in due course of time. I read in Prabhupada's books. You chant Hare Krishna, and then Nam Gun Rup Lila. Eventually by chanting, the name becomes manifest, the qualities of Krishna become manifest, the form of Krishna, and the pastimes become manifest. So I said I read it in Prabhupada's books, and so I was explaining that yes, we have to see in the context of other things. He said, well, I read this and this is my understanding. So I said, well, that's all right, but you still have to take guidance to understand what's in Prabhupada's books. He said, well, Prabhupada isn't guiding. His idea was that you just read Prabhupada's books and you can understand everything. But he'd misunderstood, and everyone present there could understand that he had misunderstood. But he was adamant on the point that he did understand, because his reading of Prabhupada's books was an understanding in his own way. As I said to him, you do it your own way. You make Frank Sinatra your guru. So he was adamant that he could understand, and his understanding was by reading Prabhupada's books was as good as anyone else's, but actually it wasn't. He had misunderstood. So you also need to... Who can just pick up Bhagavad Gita as it is and understand it just by reading it? Can you understand all that philosophy? It needs to be explained. Not only explained, but you need guidance in your personal life, how to implement it in your life. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya upadikshanti tajnana jnaninas tattvadarshana. You should approach self-realized souls who can guide you. Krishna has given this system. It's required. Why don't you just follow the instructions? Well, why don't we? We don't. Therefore we need whipping into shape. Prabhupada was once asked that what is the difference between person Bhagavat and book Bhagavat? So Prabhupada explained that the person Bhagavat can twist your ear. That is the difference. You can read the book. Yes, I'm following the instructions. You find some instruction. One should eat prasad sumptuously. See? I'm following the instruction. And other instructions you might not like to follow. Yeah. It may be until you're more mature. Prabhupada said several times to his disciples that you should not remain students forever. You also have to be teachers at some point. I know in my case that when I joined this movement in 1975, and I was 20 years old when Prabhupada passed away, and I was quite immature in devotional service, but I continued to take guidance from senior disciples of Prabhupada who I was serving under. And I continued to do that, and I still do, not in the same way that I did when I was by force of circumstance, I'm put in a position where I'm supposed to teach and guide others. But I was acting like a student in that regard until they also told me that now it's time for you to take sannyas. I never asked to take sannyas. I never asked that I should start accepting disciples. It was when devotees who were guiding me told me that. Then after putting both of the things off for a few years, I eventually started to do it. So Prahlad Maharaj also says that, it's said about him in Bhagavatam that he saw his elder godbrothers practically on the same level as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it depends on our needs. Disciple always remains a disciple, and he always has many gurus, as we were hearing this morning. We should always think that I'm taking guidance, but on the order of one's own guru, then at some point he may, or hopefully will, give guidance to others to continue the parampara tradition. Guru should think, I'm a servant of my guru. I'm a servant of those who are supposed to be the so-called disciples. So-called means that he should think, as Bhakti Saraswati Thakur said, that my friends come to save me from dangers. It's like if there weren't devotees, sannyasi is supposed to lecture, but if there's no one to lecture to, then who will he lecture to? Then he'll also be in mud. Maybe. So everyone's helping everyone else. Alright, you have a question? Yeah. He considers this, all devotees at all levels consider the deity, they recognize the deity as the Supreme Lord and worships him. But the Kanishta Adhikari, or beginning devotee, fails to recognize other devotees and other living beings. He disrespects or disregards them. Whereas more advanced devotees, we're talking a lot about relationships. So actually, core Vaishnava relationships means that we're on the Kanishta Adhikari platform. Because he worships the Supreme Lord. Acharya meva haraye, pujam yashradhaye gate, natad bhakteshu chaneshu. Those are the symptoms. That he worships the Supreme Lord with faith, but natad bhakteshu chaneshu. But he doesn't have the same faith in devotees or doesn't respect others. Sabhakta prakrita smita. He's a devotee, but prakrita. It means he's on the material platform. Actually, devotee means on the spiritual platform, but we say prakrita. That means he's mixed up with the material nature. This is like a contradictory term, prakrita bhakta, oxymoron. It's like saying a rich poor man. The two things are contradictory. Materialistic devotee. Devotee cannot be materialistic. We say materialistic devotee. That means he's got one foot here and one foot there. It's a dangerous position. If you have one foot in two different boats, you can easily fall down in the water. So it's a Chaha Komal Shraddha. Shekanishta Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, who's got very soft faith, can be easily changed. He's called neophyte devotee. Yeah, well, then he's not even come up to the Prakriti Bhakti platform. He's still simply Prakriti, not Aprakriti. It's simply on the material level. Okay, we'll finish there. Next, following supposed to be 11:15, right? So, Mataji here was asking about books. I'm also running my regular commercial. They show you commercial, just like wherever you drive, you'll see the same advertisement again and again and again. So eventually, so this is a commercial for my books, which are sitting here. Some of you weren't here yesterday. Beginner's Guide to Krishna Consciousness. A message to the youth of India. Vangshidas Babaji. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The story of Rasikananda and others. You wanted this Brahmacharya book. Glimpses of traditional Indian life. Alright, we're finishing now. The next program is 11:15. If you want to stretch your legs, please do it now.